What's up guys, today's deck profile is going to be on Alice the Girl in the Looking Glass. This is going to be the one of Valkyrie of Fairy Tales over the Saint of Healing, which will be Thursday's video. I actually made this deck. It's really weirdly similar to Arla. It was kind of the same main deck I guess I wanted to do, but there is a couple differences. I do run Deep Blue in this build for mana fixing, but I don't run it with any soldiers, which I find really weird because I did run soldiers in Arla and it's almost better in here, I guess you could say. But I might be tweaking that Arla list too, because making this deck made me kind of think of some ideas for that one. So this one still runs Deep Blue, but it's kind of more aggressive. I wanted to make sure this deck can go against certain decks that I was having a little trouble with Arla, which is mainly just Vlad. So I wanted to have a list that maybe is really similar. Maybe you can kind of form a way where you can side into both of them the way I go from Arla to Alice, but this one doesn't have Arla sided, so it's kind of different, but it might be similar in a way. If you guys will kind of see more how if I go on and you've seen the Arla video, but there's a lot of similarities between this build and that build. It's just they kind of have different curves, of course, because this also doesn't have Aramis, which is a really big part in the Arla build. So let me just go through it and show you guys what I have going, and then maybe you guys can give me some feedback on what you think. So starting off with the ruler itself, we have Alice the Girl in the Looking Glass. She's 1 blue and 1 colorless to activate, which is a very low cost, which I'm really happy about. I like how, because they were making the rulers very Regalia centric, and the whole idea is to really feel like your ruler is a part of the reason why you're playing that deck. This would kind of counteract itself if they were kind of a really high cost, because then you couldn't really be aggressive with them early on. It would kind of be like something that just gets you out of a situation, or you just don't really rely on it at all. Kind of how things were before Regalias came out, but I actually like the way things are going nowadays. I really like the idea that like this is going to be my powerhouse and possible win condition, and then I can build my deck around helping this, opposed to my ruler somehow, you know, helping the deck itself somehow. I like it more ruler centric. So it's blue and 1 colorless to J-activate. You can tap her to search your main deck for Deep Blue and add it to your hand. This is of course amazing because the one problem with Arla, well, it wasn't really a problem because I had so much deck thinning, but you can argue that if you don't hit Deep Blue, stuff like Blessing of Yggdrasil and stuff would have been dead in that deck because it cost green and I didn't have any green main deck. And you don't really have that problem with Alice, because in a very, very like what if situation, if you're just drawing horribly, which I haven't had any trouble with this deck anyway, but if you are in that situation, you can of course just tap it to search Deep Blue, and you might think that you're losing out on a turn, but unless you're going against Blazer, which I wouldn't recommend this play against. A lot of people don't know, I've said this also in my activated enter ability video and all that stuff, but when a J ruler or a ruler, however you want to just refer to a ruler, sorry, I'm blabbing again, but a ruler can of course once per turn either tap for a stone or use a tap activate ability. If this is a non-tap activate ability like Grimm, you could do it as, well, you can only do it once per turn because Grimm specifies once per turn, but you can tap for a stone and use that activate ability, but of course where it requires you to tap, you can't. What makes this so good is a lot of people, I've also mentioned this play a lot of times too, but a lot of people don't understand that you can J-activate a ruler, and while J-activate itself is in chase, you can chase with the activate ability of your ruler. So in this case, you pay blue and white and you claim that you're J-activating. To your J-activate, you then use the activate ability, and of course remember that you can't do this with calling a stone or anything like that, but with activate abilities you can, because they entered the chase. So you J-activate, you then claim that you're chasing to the J-activate with your activate ability of Alice. You would then flip to her Valkyrie side and come into the field rested, and then her enter effect would go through the chase, and you would get a fairy tale, and then get Deep Blue because you use the activate ability of Alice the Girl in the Looking Glass, which is ridiculous because that's such an easy +2. I mean, you pay 2, which is almost nothing. You get a 10/10 body. You get Deep Blue if needed because, let's say, you know, you need the mana fixing in your hand because you don't have the proper colors. You get a fairy tale that can help you next turn, and whatever the proper situation might be. And you get her God ability is open, of course, if you have the mana for it. If it's turn, let's say 4, and you even already have a Deep Blue and they have 2 really strong monsters, you can do this play, add Deep Blue to your hand, use her God ability and blow something up for 500, and then discard the deep blue user to do another 500. So, and of course, there's different things in the deck that amplify this as well. So, for people that don't know, when Alice enters the field, you get to search a fairy tale from your deck, and then counters on fairy tales you control cannot be removed by effects. So there's Cinderella and Snow White in this deck that both put counters on themselves, and then they're removed depending on what they're. Each one has a different effect that makes it remove, which I'll get into when I show them off. But so this keeps it from removing, which is great because the counters benefit those cards. And then her God ability is essentially to pay blue and red, and you use Thunder on something essentially, not direct or to J Resonators, but you could do it to just Resonators. So you hit something for 500, and at this point, you can pay 1 to copy this effect as many times as you want by paying 1 as many times as you want. So if you have 10 stones, you can pay the original red and blue to hit something for 500, and then you pay 1 to hit something else for 500 or the same target. Then you hit another 1 and do 500, 500, 500, 500 as many times as you can pay the stones. And so yeah, note that it is as many different targets as you want, as many times as you want, but it has to all happen within that one chase because this ability is once per turn. So you can't, do it once and then later on in the turn do it again. It has to all be copied within that one kind of sequence. So Alice is an amazing ruler. I think she's very underrated. A lot of people haven't been looking at how good blue and light can be right now, and I think they're the two colors to beat, which is why I'm actually running the 4 light vapors. I don't have any true stones in this. I didn't really feel the need for it because I do have split-sided, and with Arla there's a real good reason to run Almir's, but I didn't feel like you needed it in this. So it's literally just 4 light vapors and 6 water stones. So once again, I want it to be safe from split while being able to side it because it does make the Vlad matchup really good. And then this way, if you're going against Blazer, they also can't split you in return. So I just really like this lineup with either Alice or Arla. These colors work extremely well with both those rulers. For the Resonators, I'm running 4 Perceval, of course, because there's a decent amount of Regalias to be searching out in this deck. I think I'm running 8. It might be 7 because I might have 3 of one of them, but I'm pretty sure it's 8. Perceval, of course, on enter lets you check the top 5 cards of your deck, and if there's a Regalia or Knight of the Round Table amongst them, you can add it to your hand. Deep blue is very important, and you don't want to have to deactivate early for it. It's just an option, so I'd rather grab it if I can. For Cheshire Cat, this is of course for deck thinning as well. It gets you to deep blue faster, and Laevateinn, which is the other Regalia, it fixes a lot of broken hands, and it kind of gives you something that you can go for. Even though this deck has been really consistent, I don't really have broken hands, but you can't run a water deck without Cheshire. So I then run 3 Familiar of Holy Wind. I decided that anything that would need a mana fixing for it, like how this is green and I don't have any green outside of deep blue, I would only run 3 of and not 4 of, just in case to kind of fix the ratios a little bit. I didn't want to maybe open this immediately if I can maybe see a Cheshire Cat instead. I would rather kind of use a Cheshire Cat, see one of these, stack the card on top. If I have deep blue, then play this, because this on enter also nets you a card. So then you stack a card with Cheshire, play this, and it adds that card you stack to your hand, so you're not really going to see it next turn. You can just get it as early as possible. Plus the banish effect is nice. I like being able to kill stuff like Grettles and Laura the vampire, the blood speaker I mean. So the 300 damage off this is great. 3 Cinderella. Because she can return herself to her hand with paying 2 blue, I've always found that this is too much to run 4 of. When this card enters the field, you put a glass counter on it, and whenever she deals damage, the glass counter is removed. But whenever she has the glass counter, she gets 600 attack. So she becomes an 8/8 2-drop. And with Alice, if she's on the field, the glass counter is not removed, so you would permanently have an 8/8 Cinderella, which is ridiculous. And if they ever try to do anything like a stoning to death or something, you could just bounce it to your hand and then play it again. So Cinderella is a very solid card in this deck. And then I have 2 Snow Whites. Snow White is really great as well. She has First Strike and Swiftness on a 3-drop with 5/7. That's incredible. I mean, that's feat sync stats, and of course she doesn't have the quick cast, but Swiftness and First Strike is ridiculous as a combination. And then to make things even better, whenever she attacks, she gets a passion counter, and whenever she attacks, she can deal 300 damage to a target Resonator for each passion counter on it. And you then remove all the passion counters. So if you attack once and you get a counter and you have 300 and you don't want to use it, the second time you attack you'll have 600 and you can remove it to use it. Note that if she attacks and decides to remove the counter and destroys a target, this happens before the blocking phase. So if you attack with Snow White and blow something up, they're still allowed to block with something else. You can't destroy the blocking target. It's kind of like the way Lancelot works. So it's you attack and then you blow something up right away. So, but it doesn't really matter because you could still hit the blocking target actually, but I mean if you do it earlier, they still have the right to block with something else. So you could, I'm sorry about that, you could shoot the blocker, which is really great because let's say they have a 8/8 or something like that, or let's say like a Scion, of the ancient lore, it's like a 7/7 body, which is around the same cost. If you attack and they attempt to block, you can shoot it for 300, and then the first strike would hit it for 500, and it would just die, so she would not take any damage. And once again, with Alice, she never loses her counters, so she stays stacking those passion counters and dealing a bunch of damage every turn. And then the main reason why I'm actually playing light other than Perceval is Gwiber. Just like in Arla, I think this is way too good to pass up. The fact that you have Cheshires and Percevals and now Familiar of Holy Winds in this deck, the fact that it's just all that deck thinning and all those great one-drops that kind of replace themselves means Gwiber never feels like you're just dumping your whole hand to play it since everything's replacing itself, and you dig it out so easily. I mean, you can easily go Cheshire until, let's say, Familiar and Gwiber, you stack the Gwiber, you then play Familiar, it then nets you Gwiber, and then you play Gwiber. It's just so easy to manipulate, and that's why I didn't run the soldiers. Even though I really wanted to, I just couldn't find the space for it because I kind of wanted to go for like a more fairy tale approach for the deck. But it's just so good to be able to dig out such a powerful card and play it so early. And then the thing is that like Blazer, I feel has a really good matchup against stuff because his main deck is so strong because of the color fixing for red. But I just personally don't like the fact that he can't J-activate, you know, unless your opponent has a J-ruler, because it feels like, kind of like how I said where the whole game's going for very ruler-centric, it feels like you're kind of holding yourself back. I mean, in this deck, it's like, you know, if I play Gwiber and I have a well-established field and I've gotten some damage in, and even if they're siding something like Susanoo against me, if they blow up Gwiber and attack with Susanoo and I even have to like block with the Cheshire and I take like 1,000 damage, it's totally fine because next turn I could just J-activate Alice and like blow up his Susanoo, and I did that for free. I didn't need a card in my hand, I just had to pay some stones, and I just get rid of such a huge problem card, whereas when I have a Gwiber, they have to use cards from their hand, or they have to use that Susanoo, or they have to use the side deck. So it just feels really, I know Blazer's a great ruler, but I do think that there's a little overhype going on for it. I think it's just so much better to have a ruler that can kind of control the board so much rather than kind of wait and play a more control aspect. Not that there's anything wrong with that playstyle, because I personally like playing very slower long matches against those kind of decks, but particularly for Blazer, I feel like there's maybe a couple ways to make it more aggressive and then use the red in a form of kind of, not aggro, but like stuff like Gwiber and stuff, which is great, and maybe Lancelots because they do damage to the board too, but I wouldn't particularly try to play like full-on control Blazer. And not that it doesn't work, I don't know. It just seems like you're gonna end up dumping your whole hand to get rid of stuff like this often. And then I have a Glinda. This is where the toolbox for fairy tales comes in. I have one-ofs of a couple fairy tales I like. Glinda is great because it makes their spells cost 2 more. This is actually really relevant right now because we have spirals and stuff like that. Flame King Shout is also a really good counter to, not a counter to this deck, but you don't want to lose cards for no reason. And losing your Cheshires and stuff really sucks because they're really great blockers. And so having a Glinda on board means they're going to have to either Thunder Disc to then use Flame King Shout, or they're going to have to Flame King Shout for 5, which is most likely not going to happen. So that's always really great as well. Also, the unblockable aspect to this, it makes, even if they have a flyer, your Gwiber can get 1200 in, which is a huge amount of damage. So I really like having access to one Glinda. The Little Prince, because there is aggro decks going around right now, especially with like the whole like people testing out the really like the 28 Regalia deck or whatever. I think this is really good to have. It's access to a card that's going to always be a 6/6 because they can't get rid of Cheshire, and because it's untargetable, and so it's a level 1 that gives Little Prince 4/4 because Little Prince gains 400 for every other cost Resonator on the field that doesn't share a level with its cost with itself. So for every 1, 3, 5, and so on, it would get 4/4. So Little Prince with Cheshire is a 6/6 for a 2-drop, which is great. It heals for 1,000 if you have less than 1,000 life, and if you did a play where it was kind of like, you know, Cheshire Familiar into Gwiber, and then you drop Little Prince, you have 1,000 2-drop because you have a Gwiber and a 1-drop. So there's just a lot of things you could do with this card, and I've always liked it. So I decided to run one. Etna. Etna is actually extremely good in this deck, a lot better than it was in Arla because of the fact that you can search this off deactivating and the deep blue. There's been a lot of times where if I'm playing against someone and they have like a Blazer the Resonator and something else that's really threatening on the board, and I just can't really keep up with blocking with all the Cheshires, you can easily just, let's say they have like 4 Resonators and you have like 6 mana. You go J-activate Alice by paying 2, you then tap to search deep blue, you add Etna to your hand, and you add deep blue to your hand, assuming you already have a deep blue on the field. And then when you summon Etna for 3, you can pay the 4th mana you have as one of the extras for her Awakening ability. For anyone that doesn't know, Etna, on enter, you can pay an X amount, and whatever the X amount you pay is for her Awakening, you rest cards your opponent controls equal to the number of extra mana you paid. So you can essentially pay 3 for Etna, pay the 1 extra you have, and then dump the deep blue because it gives you a mana, and that's 5. And then you would rest 2 cards, and every time Etna does direct damage, you make them discard a card. So I think the fact that you get this with deep blue just makes it so strong because it's just an extra mana for her to abuse. And unless they have a Stoning to Death or a Flame of the Outer World, this is just going to sit there and get a lot of things in. And with how much the Gwibers kind of absorb all the resources your opponent has to use, it kind of, by the time you do get your Etna out to kind of control their board, they're very exhausted, and if they are playing something like Blazer, they'd only be able to J-activate and of course kill Alice in that play. But you know, you'd be a little bit more careful what you're doing. You'd want to make sure you have the proper hand to be able to kind of then counteract Blazer, maybe even have Gwiber open to maybe try to attack it if he tries to attack or something. So Etna's just great. I've always liked it. And then lastly, I have 1 Oz. Oz is good because I have 3 Thunders in this deck. Like I said, I wasn't going to run 4 of any card that I have to have the mana fix from Deep Blue for. So I figured I can essentially use Alice to search Oz if there's a lot of situations where people will be at like 500 life and you just need a way out and you're digging for that Thunder. And so I could deactivate Alice, grab Oz, and then when I play Oz, I'll get Thunder, and then I'll Thunder them for games. So this is one of the cards that's also really good for the side because I have Grimm. So being able to pitch it for any other fairy tale just makes it even better. So it's not like the craziest play you can make, but I did want access to my Thunders because I didn't have 4, so I just decided to run the 1 Oz. Moving on to the spells, I have 4 Deep Blues. Deep Blue lets you pay blue to produce red or green, so that's where all the mana fixing comes in. I can play the Oz and the Familiars and the Thunders and everything else because this allows me to. You can normally tap this to put a soldier that's 1-drop into the field if you have Alice as your ruler, or tap it to add it to your hand if you don't have Alice as your ruler. It makes me really sad that I'm not taking advantage of this effect because Alice's Little Scout is incredible and I've always loved that card. But I thought maybe I'd try to go for that in the Saint deck instead because it is a lot more of a slower deck kind of, and it kind of plays more of a control-y aspect. So I might try to go for like a deck thinning, maybe control aspect with that deck. But I didn't want to pass up the opportunity to be really aggressive with this one because it also has so much control in it. So I'm not running the soldiers, and I'm sorry for anyone that was really looking forward to seeing a bunch of soldiers in an Alice deck, but maybe I'll put in the Saint deck. I have to see. This is strictly just for the fixing mana, and I think that's itself is worth running, but sorry to anyone who really wanted to see the soldiers. And then for Laevateinn, so I did have 8, I was pretty sure I had 8. This is just amazing in this deck because it makes her God ability do 200 more upon every tap. If you have this during your draw phase and you tap it and then untap during recovery and tap it again, your God ability is doing 900 damage to every target, let alone if you have 2 of these. That goes all the way up to 1300, which is just ridiculous. And what makes that so great is I had a game against a Vlad player where I had sided split, and this is back when I was playing Arla and I had Valkyrie and Laevateinn sided, and I attacked with Alice for 1800 because I had 2 Laevateins up, and he dropped Feetsing to block. He knew it wasn't going to prevent the damage, but he wanted to at least block to prevent all of it. And I was able to just respond with the God ability, blow up his Feetsing. I had enough mana. I think I was at 6 mana, so I paid 2 for the god ability, destroyed the Feetsing, paid 2 additional to destroy his other monsters just cause, got the 1800 in, and then I had 2 blue open, and I had deep blue, so I paid the 2 for Split Heaven and Earth, and just it took the game right away because the 1800 was too big of a hit, and he had a bunch of special stones. So Atlas is just really insanely aggressive with this card, and it makes its god ability so much better. So there was no way I was gonna not run it. I mean, even if they have a Scythe and I don't have the swiftness, it almost doesn't matter because you can enter the field with the tapping away, where you enter the field tapped and search deep blue and get the fairy tale, so you plus off of it so much anyway. So unless they have Blazer, which is, you know, I'm not gonna maybe go straight in with that play if I can't get some damage in, because they're just gonna use Scythe and Blazer to kill me back. But if they're using like Resonators or something with Scythe, that's something I definitely do just to, you know, get in there. And it's still pumping my damage, so if I don't have the swiftness, it's still totally worth using. And then 3 Thunder, once again, only 3 because I don't have all the red for it, so I wanted to only have 3, and I can search it with Oz. 3 Foresee. Just like in Arla, I think if you're playing water, you need at least 3 of these, if not 4. This card has never been personally dead for me. It just makes... I don't typically always keep it in my opening hand, but I sometimes do. It really depends on what the other cards are, but if you do put this in your deck and you end up shuffling your deck by searching something or whatever, top decking this at any point is just really great. It makes you feel like you have so much more advantage going for you, and there's just no way I wouldn't play this in a water deck. 1 Glimpse of Kaguya. Once again, a lot of people are confused. This says cancel target activate ability, and it specifically shows the bold activate, and then you draw a card. Please keep in mind that the only reason a lot of cards, like for Alice itself, you can see that the God Art is just a God Art, it doesn't have Activate. This is still an Activate ability. The only reason why some cards say Activate and some cards don't, or why some cards have the, you know, tap symbol and say Activate or just a tap symbol, is because Perceval wanted to clear up all the kind of wording on all the cards, because it was like, you know, continuous, Activate, Activate. So they didn't want to have so much of that. But if a card requires you to do something like banish this card, blah, 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 that's an activate ability. If it has a tap symbol, that's an activate ability. If it's just like, you know, all Resonators gain +2/+2, that's a continuous effect. So please keep in mind that this stops a lot more than people might know. It stops the Regalia tap effect, or it stops the Regalia banish effect to give something imperishable. It stops God abilities. It stops Grimm from pitching a card to search a fairy tale. Anything that's an activate ability, it just stops. So the only thing you can't stop is stuff like field spells that have, you know, +2/+2 to everything on the field, or you can even stop something like an Arthur trying to banish you to come back to the hand, or a Death Sight trying to come back to the hand. So the fact that this can clutch a game and just stop a God ability is ridiculous, and I would never not run 1. It's just too good in water right now. And then 1 Xeex to be able to just negate summons, and 1 Keen Sense. I've been liking one of these because of all the deck thinning and all the Foresees. I almost always see them, and that 1 counter always feels like enough. So you could double up on these if you want, but I've never really seen the point to run more than 2. I mean, 1 of each. So yeah, that's it for all the spells. Lastly, for the side deck, I have a Grimm the Fairy Tale Prince. Against certain decks like Vlad or maybe Blazer with the main deck Scythe, if you don't want to be using Alice, you can just side into this. It would make it so that he can never flip if you're having trouble with that. If they are using a more aggressive build, and having another 10/10 on the field just makes it even harder. It also makes all the Scythes dead because you obviously don't have a ruler. They can still, of course, use it to like pitch it for Gwiber and stuff, which makes it kind of like a free draw too. But this is just an option if you wanted to. It helps against the 28 Regalia deck as well, because you could always pitch for a Cheshire, and continuously having Cheshire means they're never going to get to your life until you can have some Gwibers going in for damage. So Grimm has just been amazing in the side. I have 1 Rapunzel with it as well, because Rapunzel I only specifically like in Grimm. I wouldn't really try running anywhere else. The same with Hamlin. She's more for OTKs because she can tap to give everything flying, or herself flying and then pump herself up to an insane amount and just continuously keep attacking. With Cheshires and Green Cats as well, it gives her so many targets. Hamlin, he's just good at resting stuff. A turn 3 Telefairy Tale into Hamlin is extremely strong. I just feel like against the meta right now, there's not a lot of outs to this other than stoning to death. So having Hamlin against, let's say, Blazer, and like, because they always start off really slow with like Guinevere's and Root Eggs and stuff. If you just on enter rest Guinevere, she's of course going to sack herself. But then at that point, every time he plays a Root Egg or something, you just attack directly, rest a Root Egg, and just keep getting damage in, and there's not really much they can do till they maybe get a Blazer on the field, like the Resonator Blazer. So by then, which you'd probably have a well-established board with like blockers anyway. So I think Fairy Tale, which I have 3 of in the side, into Hamlin turn 3 is just ridiculously strong, and unless they have stoning, that can actually just immediately win you the game. It's just a great card. And then I have 3 Savior of Splendor, which removes a target Darkness Resonator from the game. This is for anything that might be really heavy on stuff like Arthur or Mephistopheles. You don't want to not have an answer for them because you have the space in the side anyway. And then because Alice herself has been really popular and Grimm is getting actually a little attention too, I have Return to Stories for other decks that use fairy tales. Something like Cinderella could be really annoying, and be careful that they don't return themselves to the hand to the activation of this. So if they have 2 blue, don't hit Cinderella with this. But it hits a lot of really important cards. Something like a Hamlin is really dangerous for this deck as well, because they could just rest the Gwibers. So being able to just remove the Gwiber from the game, the Hamlin from the game is really strong. And then lastly, just 3 Split Heaven and Earth. Once again, I don't want to run 4 of this because it's red and I don't have the mana fix for it all the time, so I just have 3. But I don't think with all the drawing, I don't think you're going to need more than that anyway. This still means if you do see one a little too early and they use something like Spiral, you could probably throw it away because there's 2 more in your deck, and if you double up on them against any deck like Vlad that does have a bunch of special stones, it's most likely going to be game if you can definitely get 2 of them off, especially because at any point if they're open or if they only have, a couple blockers, you can J-activate, enter the field, swing with Laevateinn for a crazy amount with Alice, and then just use the God ability if they try to block and you get the damage in. So this combo is really ridiculous. If you side these in, or if you side any of this in, make sure you take out the Laevateins. Well, other than if you keep Alice, but if you're using Grimm, make sure you take out the Laevateins, but keep the deep blues because you still have the green. I would never keep Laevateinn in if you have Grimm because it doesn't make any sense. So yeah, that's it for the side deck. So thanks for watching, guys. That was my Alice the Valkyrie Fairy Tale deck profile. I hope you guys liked it, even though it is kind of similar to the Alice deck. And once again, to anyone expecting a bunch of soldiers, I'm really sorry. I might do that with the Saint. I just wanted to make it as competitive as possible because I know a lot of people are going to their locals and are going against people that have been playing the game for a while. And if you're new, I don't want you to be kind of suffering just because of that. And it's not that the Alice, the soldier build can't be competitive. I just found this one the most in my personal opinion. So if you guys have any questions about any of that or in anything in general, make sure to either message me on Facebook, which I have the link for in the description below, and the deck list is also in the description as well, or just leave a comment on the YouTube video. But please avoid sending me YouTube messages themselves because they're extremely hard on mobile. Just use either a comment here or a message on Facebook. Do not send any YouTube messages. And then if you guys haven't subscribed yet, please do, because I do have a bunch of deck profiles coming. Blazers coming tomorrow. So yeah, if you guys don't have anything else, anything to ask me or anything, just look forward to all of that, and I'll catch you guys next time.